Welcome to Speaking of Scary. This is Arthur.
And this is Tyler. And today we're going to be pitting two horror legends against one another in our first Versus episode, starring the Boogeyman, Michael Myers, against the Mr. Chainsaw himself, Leatherface.
Before we get to that, though, we want to talk about something that happened the morning of this recording. We just found out that horror legend Sid Haig unfortunately passed away this morning, and we just wanted to quick talk about that. He was a legend in the industry. He was a big deal, especially early on. I don't know how many people know about this, but he was like a big man. He was
famous for playing?
Back in the day, he was like a bit actor.
Okay.
He did a lot of bit roles. He was in a lot of blaxploitation movies. A lot of I think he was in some Romero stuff. Mm-hmm. But in 1992, he gave up acting. He quit the industry. He became a hypnotherapist, I guess, or
interesting.
Something like that. But he gave up acting because he was sick and tired of being typecast in these roles. He'd get the same role over and over again, where he was just this big guy, usually like a
posing figure sort of thing.
Yeah. And so he quit acting forever until Rob Zombie, who was a huge fan, went to him and said, "Sid, I have this new movie that I'm making." It was his first movie. It was House of a Thousand Corpses. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I really want you to be in this movie." And he actually got Sid out of retirement, and he came back, and we got Captain Spaulding, which was an amazing character. So glad that he did that. And he was in that. He picked his acting career back up after that for a while. And unfortunately, sometime like a month before we recorded this, I think maybe a couple months, he fell down at his house, and he was hospitalized, and he picked up a lung infection, and he couldn't get over it, and it eventually took him. But Captain Spaulding, if you go back and watch those movies, Captain Spaulding was a great character, and a lot of those lines were actually ad-libbed by him too.
Was he in other Rob Zombie films too?
Yeah, he was in Devil's Rejects, Kill Bill Volume 2. He was supposed to have a bigger part in the new Three from Hell movie, which is the third in the trilogy from House of a Thousand Corpses, but unfortunately his health is already failing, so they really scaled back his role in that movie, which is funny in a way, just because Lionsgate actually said that if Sid Haig hadn't signed on to do the movie, they weren't gonna produce the movie.
Gotcha.
So he's the whole reason this third movie came out, even though his role had to be
dialed back.
From what I could tell, Sid doesn't have any kids, but he did have a wife that he's leaving behind, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. But we just wanted to just shout out Sid Haig and for everything he's done for horror, and rest in peace, and thank you for all the memories. Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the main event.
So let's start with a quick roundup, kind of just like a brief profile of our two characters here, starting with Michael Myers, if you want to take it off from there.
Yeah. Michael Myers was born on October 19th, 1957. Depending on which timeline you go by, Halloween gets really convoluted because
they edit the backstory a lot.
It gets retconned, yeah. But I am going with the Halloween 6 version of his storyline because that's the one I like. So that's the one you're going to get. So we find out in Halloween 6 that he was a regular kid who was influenced by this cult. They didn't kidnap him, but they kind of I don't know.
Like he was exposed to them?
Yeah, they secretly indoctrinated him.
Okay.
And that's what kicked that's the whole reason he murdered his sister. That's what kicked this whole thing off. So he's influenced. He actually has a rune burned into him. And that's the driving force that keeps him killing. That's why he's chasing after his family, because he's in constant torment until he kills his entire bloodline.
Interesting.
And so that's also why he's super strong, doesn't seem to die, is because he can't until he finishes this mission from this cult.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Oh.
And then he's been in and out of mental institutions his whole life, only breaking out when to wreak havoc on Halloween.
Yep.
For the most part, it's to chase after Laurie Strode or Jamie Lloyd. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it depends on which reality, Halloween reality you follow.
Mm-hmm. What kind of abilities does he have?
So superhuman strength, we can see that time and time again. He lifts people easily with one arm.
Like the time he stabbed that dude through the chest and just impaled him with a knife with a kitchen knife into a wall.
Yeah, one of my favorite Michael Myers scenes is actually, and I mean, this guy had to have this real life ability, and I've always just been in awe of it, is in Halloween H2O when Laurie goes back into the school. Michael is actually like on the ceiling and she walks by and he slowly lowers himself down by one arm behind her. And like he's like, and I just was always in awe of like the upper body strength it would take to do that. But Michael Myers, the character, super strong. He, in the original movie, he dug up and moved Judith Myers' coffin by himself.
Yeah.
And I've never had to lift a coffin by myself, but I'm assuming they're super heavy and not easy to move for one person. Death proof, again, depending on what you believe.
I mean, he survived some pretty crazy stuff in the movies, like getting shot repeatedly, stabbed.
End of Halloween 2, he gets blown up and caught on fire. You see flames shooting out of his eye holes, but he comes back. So, death proof. I mean, Loomis said that the devil won't have him. So that's another theory, is that like Michael Myers is so evil that he just can't die because no one will take him. Stealth, Michael Myers is always sneaking up behind people and no one.
There was, I can't remember which film it was in specifically, but the doctor referred to him as a hunter, as a predator, essentially. And I really like that analogy because it's just like, it shows you that he's not just like a mindless killer, that he actually stalks and hunts his prey and looks for opportunities to kill, which is very, like, if you watch the films and you see how he operates, he's always kind of lurking around in the shadows, trying to set up, like, watching for good opportunities to get people alone to kill them when they're like most vulnerable or like least expecting it. He demonstrates
intelligence.
Yes.
In the, like, he drives off in the first movie, he drives off in the car, and but he's been institutionalized since he was 7, something like that.
8 years old. So they wanted the opportunity to learn.
Yeah,
Clearly
and
he did.
Dr. Loomis just was like, oh, he must have learned that from a different inmate. Like, they just told him how to drive, and he just knew. So he does demonstrate intelligence.
For his weapons of choice, I think he's pretty broad.
He is pretty broad. I mean, he'll use anything. Like that kitchen knife, the butcher knife. That's like his iconic
weapon.
You know, that's
just
what
like
he killed
Jason's
his sister
machete.
with.
Or,
exactly.
Yeah.
He has, like, there's a great scene in the original where he kills the girl with the telephone cord, and she, like, the actress actually wanted more screen time, so that scene is so absurd because she was like doing everything she could to keep herself on the screen. So that's why she like even once they pan down, you still see her arm like come up because she was just trying to
get more camera time.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But the environment, absolutely. He will use anything that's around him.
Yep.
He kills Jamie Lloyd with farm equipment. He like bashes a security guard's head through metal bars, like jail bars. I think more than once we've seen him impale people by like lifting them up and throwing them onto whatever is.
In other words, he's creative. He's very creative with his killing.
So Michael Myers is probably one of the most inventive when it comes to his weapons of choice. What about Leatherface?
All right, so Leatherface, we're not really sure when he was born. I think the first film the original film took place in the 1974. But yeah, so there's really not much to say about his childhood other than that he was developmentally disabled. His family treated him very much like a workhorse. He was just born hideous pretty much, and they just always gave him masks and whatever because he was not pretty to look at, shall we say. He was obviously kept in a basement and basically just kind of lives as a servant to his family, which we'll get more into in a moment here. As for his abilities, doesn't really demonstrate super strength that I recall from his films at all. Mainly just he's a really big dude and he's strong like bull. So, but yeah, I think one of the other things too is that we're going to get into this too during the actual battle itself, is that his family is a family of cannibals, and that they largely use him for their means of procuring food, the other white meat.
But at the same time, they know that he's their meal ticket, so while they treat him like
garbage,
trash
they also enable him to
Yeah. So if he was ever in a situation where he might be getting murdered by Michael Myers,
they'll reluctantly come to his aid.
Exactly.
Yeah. Obviously, fear is a big part of him too. Like when you see a dude wearing other people's faces, wielding a chainsaw, charging at you, it's pretty frightening. Shock and awe is kind of a big part of his MO, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas, Michael Myers is a little bit more kind of behind the scenes, kind of kills you when you're least expecting it. Is there anything else on his abilities that you want to get into?
Yeah, experience. So
Okay.
before all this stuff, before they became these cannibals,
Mm-hmm.
they lived in a meat packing town. It was a
Yep.
meat packing plant, and the reason they became cannibals is the plant shut down and everyone else moved out, and they had to figure out how to survive. But he has all those years of experience with murdering animals and cutting them up and stuff like that. I mean, when you're going up against someone like Michael Myers, maybe that's not as big, but it is like you've done it. Like there's no, he has no stopping.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing.
He wouldn't hesitate, I feel like,
Yes.
coming face to face with Michael Myers. He would just see him and just, the only thing he's going to be thinking is kill.
Exactly.
He's not going to be worrying about what Michael's capable of.
And then what weapons do we?
Well, obviously the iconic chainsaw, can't forget that. But he's also used a couple other things, like basically stuff that you'd find around like a meatpacking plant or on the farmstead, like mallets, meat hooks, chains, stuff like that. But we don't really see a whole lot of creativity with him necessarily per se. And I think that's mainly just because he has his favorite weapons of choice. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So he sticks pretty limited, I feel like, for things that he can find around his own home. But yeah, he doesn't really feel the need to get creative, I feel like. So with that brief rundown, I think we're ready to
Let's
start playing out some scenarios.
get ready to rumble.
All right. Where would you like to start?
Let's start in a suburban environment where the two would have to be basically city streets.
Mm-hmm. Small houses, other people.
Yep, trying to kill each other, but they're also going to have to deal with killing survivors and
Potentially police. And
also trying to avoid said survivors and police as well.
Yeah. Initially, I think Michael Myers has a clear edge on this one, simply because Leatherface is kind of a mindless killer. Like, sees something in front of him, he charges that and tries to kill it. He's not going to be too worried, I think, about when civilians in the streets and stuff are going to be seeing him. Whereas Michael Myers is a bit more reserved. He's going to be more of a strategist.
Yeah, Michael has that stealth to him. Michael also has experience here.
Yeah.
This
is his home turf,
Yeah,
essentially.
he's been, Haddonfield isn't that big according to like what they say the population is. Obviously, it looks bigger on screen. It's as big as they need it to be. But they have cars, they have a big town, more than one gas station. Michael's used to that, whereas
he's used to avoiding detection in that environment as well.
exactly, from what we know from Leatherface and his mythos, he hasn't been off of that farm or out of that town.
As far as we know, yeah.
And I mean, toward the end in the later movies, I take that back. Leatherface did take a little trip into town once, but that was in Texas Chainsaw Part 2, and that movie was very laughable. Like literally laughable. Like Toby Hooper was like, I want this to be more of a comedy, because apparently he wanted the original to have more of a dark comic sense to it, but people didn't understand that.
Okay.
So he went way over the top. So I almost think we should ignore that movie
sequel.
as far as when we're talking about mythos.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, so mythos wise, I'd say he hasn't, and definitely in the later movies, he hasn't even been off of that farm, much less out of the town, the tiny little town.
Yep.
So Michael definitely has an advantage there.
Yep.
Michael also has that where he'll grab whatever he can, whereas Leatherface might be looking around for the weapons that make him comfortable, and it's not like there's a chainsaw on every street corner.
We can even assume that even if he had a chainsaw with him, I mean, you're also in an urban environment, which means people are going to know that there's a maniac running out with a chainsaw real quick. You're not going to be able to stealth around. People are going to be able to flee you fairly easily. And he's not exactly a fast guy, from what I remember from the films.
No, yeah.
He's pretty lumbering. It's mostly his presence and people failing to escape him in time is usually results in their death. Whereas Michael he's had this weird ability. He can just kind of disappear when, like, the second you look away, he's just gone. So I think he's got the clear edge in this environment. And then assuming let's throw in like some of the some of the survivors, like people on the street or people in their own homes or whatever. Obviously, Michael Myers kind of operates without alerting anybody. So he's getting, by the time that people realize that people are starting to die, Michael Myers probably gone through half the freaking people in that area. Whereas Leatherface, like, he's not going to be subtle about this at all. Right from the get-go, I feel like he's going to be charging down and everyone's going to immediately know, like, oh crap, there's a maniac with a chainsaw in the neighborhood. So I think that in this instance, I feel like Michael Myers has a clear edge. But if we shift over to a rural environment, say Leatherface's like home farmstead, I feel like we're gonna have a little bit different scenario here.
It would almost be like if we put him in that environment, it would almost be like Michael Myers becomes the hunted.
Yes, because he's not only having to contest with Leatherface, but his family as well.
And they're just gonna see him as another meal. They're not gonna see him as Michael Myers, the shape, the boogeyman, the unkilled. They're just gonna see him as a meal, and they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do to try to.
Yeah, and they don't have necessarily the mindless methods of Leatherface. They're gonna be they're rural folks. So I mean, we got to assume that they have some experience in hunting themselves. So it means they're gonna be willing to set traps and bait and all that other stuff to try to lure Michael out over to lead him towards Leatherface. Because, like, I mean, if we're getting down to it, I feel like if it came down to just a no-holds-barred face-to-face brawl, Leatherface has got this in the bag.
And, well, we've seen Michael, too, has fallen for traps before. So
yes.
If they set it, and I believe, I can't remember which Texas Chainsaw Massacre it was, but one of them takes place largely on the farm itself, and I think they had traps around the farm.
I think you're right about that. I'm pretty sure that was the beginning.
It might have been.
So yeah, without that stealth approach, without being able to take Leatherface by surprise, I feel like that a lot of Michael Myers' threat kind of vanishes into thin air in that sort of environment.
And even though Michael's escaped a lot of death, I don't think you can escape being digested.
Yeah, that or getting cut in half with a chainsaw.
Yeah, I mean, once they meet one-on-one, what are we looking at?
Okay, so I'm kind of looking at this scenario similar to the way you would take like Batman, in a sense. Like, Batman is prep time; he can beat anything, So in most situations where Michael Myers has time to prepare, because even in the farm scenario, if Michael Myers knew exactly what he was walking into, with all of those people there, if he'd be able to act and probably take out most of that family before they even realize he was on the farm. And like he'd be turning their traps against them. He'd be like
it's
looking around the
definitely
area
a numbers
using those
game in
traps.
that scenario.
Yeah,
because if they could all come at him at the same time, he wouldn't have a chance. But if he had the opportunity, if he knew how many there were, had the opportunity, and started picking them off one by one, that would be different.
What about his super strength though? Because you have to see him too. Like, let's say he got within really close quarters with Leatherface. Do you think he could overpower him? If he caught that chainsaw and stopped it from cutting in half, do you think he could overpower him?
Yes. If you think about the fact that he was able to carry that coffin, I'd say yes, because
probably just pick up Leatherface and throw him across the room.
But at the same time, Leatherface is a real big dude.
He is.
I don't think it would be easy, even with Michael Myers' super strength. I don't think it would be easy.
Not be able to throw big chunkus across the room like that.
But, and again, this depends on which version of Michael you buy into.
Yeah.
But in Rob Zombie's Halloween, he goes face to face with that trucker and just obliterates him, and that trucker's huge.
Yeah, that's true. Okay,
but I honestly, in my opinion, I think if we took Leatherface and Michael and put them in a room together, no holds barred, I'd have to give it to Michael.
Yeah.
That's
taking into account his super strength and everything as well.
His super strength, his superior intelligence in that matter. Yeah, being able to use his environment
to
more.
His advantage.
I think that at the end of the day, the being smarter and being more tactical is what would win out.
Okay.
Strength, if you put them up against each other just like barehanded, I don't know. I mean, Leatherface might come out on that one.
Maybe.
I guess it would depend on the tools that they have available to them. Would I be surprised if Leatherface won? No. But if I had to put money down on somebody,
It'd probably be Michael.
I would put it on Michael.
Okay.
But we're talking like 52-48.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty close fight. Now, let's take this approach of like the Freddy versus Jason film, where you had people actively pitting Jason and Freddy against one another, kind of in the middle. So now with the third, with like an X factor in there, with survivors actively working against both of them or potentially trying to turn them against each other, how do you think that would go?
Who are the survivors?
That's a good question.
Are they like final girls from any random movie, or are they you and me?
Let's go with let's stick with the Freddy versus Jason thing. It's kind of an entirely new cast of people. Maybe they're like stupid teenagers having like a cornfield party, just like that movie. You know, like typical run of the mill.
I think they would. I think Michael would win again because they would stupidly look at Leatherface and say he's the bigger of the two. He's the bigger threat. Let's get rid of him first.
Okay.
Whereas people like you and I, who know who we're facing, I would say get rid of Michael first.
Definitely has the intimidation factor. I feel like if they realize, though, in a scenario where they realize that Michael is probably the bigger threat, I could definitely see the survivors trying to use Leatherface against Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the smartest way to go about it.
Which is kind of exactly what happened in Freddy vs. Jason, from what I can recall, is that they kind of used Jason to like pin down Freddy.
They do. Yep.
I think that's probably what a similar scenario would go, assuming, of course, that they realize that Michael's probably the bigger threat of the two.
And maybe depending on how much carnage they've already seen, maybe they would. I guess the consensus would be Leatherface, because as long as they know that Michael's the bigger threat,
yeah.
And Leatherface is used to being a whipping boy. He's used to being directed. Yeah. So if they can be like, we're not the ones that are threatening you, he is, go kill him, then
eat him.
Yeah, exactly.
He keeps coming back. Here's an endless supply of food. But so what are we thinking? Probably most scenarios Michael wins. I think that's probably the consensus.
In most scenarios, Michael's gonna win just because he's got the X factors of intelligence,
super strength.
Yep, and
strategist, hunter, etc., etc.
However, there are scenarios where
if the family, with Leatherface's family at his back,
if he has support,
exactly.
Basically.
Yep. I think that's pretty accurate too. It's like if Superman was Batman. Pretty much wins in almost every case except for Lex Luthor has kryptonite. But and with that, I think that pretty much decides it.
Yeah, that's our first versus episode.
We'll definitely be doing more in the future.
Yeah,
too.
This was super fun, and we're gonna put up a lot more.
Yeah, we have some more ideas in stock. We're not sure exactly what we're gonna do next, but I feel like for sure we've definitely discussed Leprechaun, Chucky,
any of the horror icons, and we have a ton of stuff to go off of, and this probably won't even be the last time you see Leatherface or Michael Myers. We'll probably put him up against somebody else too.
Yeah, probably. And of course we'll inevitably end up using Freddy or Jason in future battles as well. All right, and with that, I guess we're finishing our main segment, so we can probably end out this session by talking about some movies or other horror material that we would like to suggest to you guys.
Yeah, so you have a trailer that you recently saw that you're really excited for.
Yeah, so there's a trailer that just came out for In the Tall Grass, which is coming to Netflix soon. That is a joint project with Stephen King and Joe Hill, who some of you may know, but most of you probably don't. Joe Hill is actually Stephen King's son. He used a different alias in order to get his own recognition as a writer. He's known for doing a couple of other horror projects, particularly my favorite graphic novel of all time, Lock and Key, which is in itself getting its own Netflix series soon. But yeah, so the trailer came up for In the Tall Grass, and from what I can tell, it seems to be about a group of people that hear a child calling for help in what appears to be just like a really large body of grass that reaches probably 8 feet or 9 feet tall. But once they step foot inside, things get strange and people get separated and perceptions get messed with, and there's a suggestion that they might not be alone in that tall grass.
Tyler just showed me the trailer right before we recorded this, and now I'm really interested in it too. I don't know anything about it. I don't know nearly as much about it as Tyler does.
I don't know anything about it beyond the trailer. But,
Well, I just think that
Yeah.
like you know Joe Hill better than I do,
Yes.
so maybe you have a better idea of his writing
he's
style.
very much like his father. Let's say that.
But it does look really interesting, and I'm definitely gonna watch it. So, I guess now we'll get to one of my favorite parts, talking about some obscure movies that you probably haven't even heard of. Halloween is coming soon, and there's a ton of stuff to watch. It never ends. But what I'm going to suggest this week that you go out and find is Tales of Halloween. I found it on Amazon Prime. I'm assuming it'll stay through at least this Halloween. I've watched it multiple times. It's an anthology series, but it's about an hour and a half long. There's 10 shorts. They're not all of them are great, but a lot of them are great. There's a great Hansel and Gretel one that's a analogy for domestic abuse, and it's just played really, really well. It's just, I think by itself that short should have won some kind of recognition.
Yeah.
It was just, but there's a lot of, I'd say 7 out of 10 of them are really good. So if you're looking for something to watch for Halloween, they're all Halloween related. They don't go off in some tangent where you're watching 9
True.
Halloween shorts and then one Christmas one or something. It's called Tales of Halloween. They're all centered around Halloween. I think Fangoria called it best Halloween anthology since Trick or Treat, so that should tell you enough right there. So we'll link to that, but Tales of Halloween, definitely worth the watch.
I guess I could do another one. So this is the one that's actually currently on Netflix. It's called The Ritual. And it's about a group of guys that decide to go on a hiking trip after one of their friends is killed in a convenience store robbery. And this trip takes place somewhere, I believe it's in Norway, I want to say. They end up finding themselves lost in some woods, and they come across this old cabin that has some really weird things inside, including what appears to be a large totem. Very ritualistic, like it's like the namesake of the film. Things get pretty weird, I'm just going to say that. Excellent payoff, really creepy, lots of tension. Overall, it's a really good watch. It's a really good watch. All right, and with that, I think we're probably going to call this episode.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. It's getting better and better. I had a lot of fun
Hashing
doing
out
this
the
one.
situation.
Expect a lot more of this and expect a lot more from us. Thank you.
Thank you.